welcome to the Rural Leaders Podcast, where we share stories of inspiration, tools to equip, and momentum to act. My name is Dana Peterson, and it's a pleasure to be with you again, Richard.
It is. It seems like I always come from funny places. I'm in my car today.
We can
Um,
see that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, but I'm not driving. So
Good.
yeah. No, I'm sitting
Well,
still.
are you in a rural area of our nation?
I am in a very rural area today. I am between St. Louis, Missouri, and Hannibal, Missouri, home of Mark Twain. Obviously, Tom Sawyer, Becky Thatcher, Huckleberry Finn. So I'm not far from their place.
The origination of a lot of good stories,
I thought that would fall in
right?
nicely. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, we are continuing our Rural Storytellers series today with our last guest, and I'm excited. We've had a really good kind of lineup of people who are talking about how to tell good stories, kind of what sort of technology is available to tell the stories of rural America. And I'm really excited about our guest today.
Oh, I am too. So our guest and we may banter a bit more, but our guest today is a friend of mine, actually a coworker at Osborne Bar Paramore. And we, as you said, Dana, we have had a great lineup of guests on our rural storytelling series. Whoops, I just about slipped up. Our guest is great at rural storytelling. Storytelling in general has a great history in kind of the rural space, the agriculture space, and is really is a professional storyteller. So um, I can't wait to introduce her here in a minute. So Dana, are you ready for the holidays?
I am. I got the Christmas tree up, and for me, that is kind of later in December than some families do, but I like to put that Christmas tree up closer to the holiday and then enjoy it into the first part of January. Um, and, getting ready for lots of activities with my family and friends, lots of opportunities to tell the stories that our family has had over the last year and then throughout the generations as well. What about you, Richard? Are you ready for the holidays?
I think so. We have, well, we have a tree up, and we're certainly excited. Obviously, Christmas is just what, 3 days away, 4 days away, and we do too. We have a great time with family and friends, and it is not only are there stories told when we all come together, but those opportunities to be together create stories that are retold. And
Mm.
uh, so anyway, it is a good time. I love Christmas, and obviously ushering in a new year where there's a chance. It's a fresh start in a lot of cases. People are making resolutions, which also could be good stories. But looking forward to certainly Christmas and the new year and all that brings.
I am as well. I am as well. This will be um, a good capstone for my first year back in my hometown. So being able to be around for the entire holiday season is definitely something that will bring lots of joy to me.
It is going to be nice for you, and I'm happy about that. I know when we were together in Washington, I know several years you would make the trek to Kansas and spend some time there. So being there full time, I know is going to be great for you, and I'm happy about that.
Definitely, definitely.
Well, so we are going to have in our next segment, we're going to have a guest that's going to tell us how we can be more effective at storytelling. Carmen Fenton is, like I said earlier, a friend, a coworker, and a great storyteller, a professional storyteller, as it were, as a public relations specialist. So we're going to be right back after these messages. and we'll have an opportunity to visit with Carmen. We'll be right back.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
People do some pretty cool things in their 40s and 50s. Why should saving for retirement be any different? So wherever you are in your retirement savings journey, head to aceyourretirement.org and start chatting with Avo today. That's aceyourretirement.org.
Welcome back to the Rural Leaders Podcast. Dana and I had a conversation just a few minutes ago talking about rural storytelling and how this is going to be the final episode of our series of rural storytellers. And we've got a good one today. Friend, coworker, Carmen Fenton. Carmen has been in the storytelling business for a long time as a professional. She spent some time in Washington. Working on the Hill, worked also for cattle producers, both at NCBA and at the Texas and Southwestern Cattle Raisers Association, and just has a knack for knowing what is a good story, how to effectively tell that story, and the platforms by which you can really amplify your message. So, Carmen, welcome.
Hello. Thank you guys for having me. I think I'll put professional storyteller on my business card. That's such a fun title, way better than PR. I mean, I think that explains exactly what PR professionals do. We help tell stories, and we have such fun jobs, sometimes difficult jobs. But I'm so happy to be here, and thank you guys for having me.
Well, it's great to have you. And Dana, can I fire off the first question?
Go for it.
All right. So when we think about rural storytelling, or when we think about storytelling in general, and this topic is rural storytelling. Can you remember a story that you helped either a group or an individual or yourself tell, and how did that go, and what was that story?
So I love this question because it's easy for me to answer. My favorite story to tell comes from my hometown here of Amarillo, and it has to do with the cattle industry. Here, I'm based in Texas, in Amarillo, Texas, which is like the cattle feeding mecca of the country, we'll say, and we produce a lot of cattle, a lot of beef here. And the association I worked for at the time saw a need for. Let me back up. So we have, like lots of areas in the country, we have a backpack program here in Amarillo where we send food insecure elementary school aged kids home with shelf stable products every weekend. And we did some investigating and worked with some of the groups that were providing those backpacks, and learned that the protein content in those bags was just severely lacking. So through a lot of legwork and a lot of unity with the cattle industry and the dairy industry here in Texas, we were able to produce a beef stick that was tested by kids. And, we went through, I think, 10 rounds of taste testing, but that would help provide protein in their bags over the weekend. And not only that, but we got to work out a deal with Fairlife, and they created like a shelf stable 8-ounce milk carton that they would put in the bags. And that all came, it was all facilitated by industry here in the area. And that program once we started doing that, it just really grew and it's expanded. We've got our snack pack program all over the country, and we're able to send those sticks and send that dairy to kids in Washington State, to kids in North Carolina, and being able and to tell that story to people outside of agriculture or people outside of Texas was just so fun. And it's so inspiring, like when you see industry come together for the greater good, like just because it was the right thing to do. And I think, Richard said I've worked in PR for a long time, but that's one of those things I got to be a part of and help tell that story that has really changed, I think, me as a person. And it's just it's my favorite one. I have a lot of stories, Richard, as I'm sure you do too, working in Washington, D.C. Some that we probably should never tell, but
That's probably true.
I will say working on the beef stick here in the Panhandle is probably the best one. And I'm so glad I got to be a part of that.
Well, Carmen, thank you for being with us today. And I really love that story because it's a story of learning about a need and a community of people in the industry and other places came together to solve the problem, and then kind of recognizing the need for growth, and that story really enabling that growth around the country. It reminds me of a lot of the stories I'm hearing in my hometown now that I've returned about someone identifying a need, a group of people coming around to solve that need. And then, in some cases, those stories get told, and in other cases, those stories may not get told. And so I'm just kind of wondering, in your experiences, is there a way that we can, as rural communities, tell those stories where it maybe doesn't feel like we're bragging, or the people who have done the work and the service to the community get all the credit, which I think kind of steers people away from telling stories.
I think that's an excellent point, and an observation that working in agriculture is very evident. Farmers and ranchers by nature do not like to talk about themselves. They want to farm. And I understand that completely. It's not everybody's job to be on television. It's not everybody's job to give a speech. It's not everybody's favorite thing in the world to go on a podcast or be on their local radio station. But I think it's so important, not only to the reputation of rural America and agriculture, but to inspire other communities and other groups of people outside of our own echo chamber to that they can do things too. It's not just about promoting yourself as look what we're able to do, look what we're doing. It's just about telling the story of what happened and showing, like, look at the impact that farmers or ranchers, or in this case, the beef industry in just this area, everyday people in just this region have been able to make a positive impact. If we can do it, you can do it too. So, I have very rarely come across someone in agriculture who is rushing to talk publicly about what they do.
Although I would say that Richard might be one who steps forward when there's a need for a really good story.
Well, Richard is a rare gem. And,
Yes, he is.
but I will tell you, I think Richard inspires his farmer colleagues to step up too and talk about it.
Agreed.
And that's part of it, right? It's leading by example. So I just encourage, you don't have to brag. You're not bragging. You're not pitching yourself. I mean, you should tell your story because it matters. It matters to people outside of your circle. It matters to people outside of your industry, and it matters for your industry. You're not promoting yourself. You're promoting the beef industry, or you're promoting corn farmers or soybean farmers in Kansas, whoever the organization might be. But we're able to expand our good when we talk about it publicly. I think that's so important for agriculture, particularly in rural America.
I couldn't agree more, and I really, really liked that answer. And Dana spent a good bit of time in adjoining offices with me at USDA. And Carmen, I think you know this too. I do have a couple of stories, and I sometimes tell them, and sometimes they take too long. Dana has told me multiple times, yeah, you've got to shorten that story. But so I have a whole bunch of things in my head. I'm trying to figure out how to ask this question, but let me try this. So we've got a listener, let's say, that's listening to this podcast right now, and there's something happening in their community, in their rural community, or in some sector of rural economic activity, and they want to tell a story about that. So, Carmen, could you give us some tips or some hints about what platforms folks should be telling those stories on? How should they go about getting started? How can they really be as effective as possible in amplifying whatever story it is that they have to tell?
Yeah, so there's so many options, right? And I think where we get sometimes overwhelmed is you want to do all the things on all the places. So I always encourage people to start with what they know, and ensure they're talking to their audience. So, I'm a millennial mom. A lot of my audience is on social media, specific social media. They're not all on all the social media. And so that's obviously a really good platform for me to tell my own story. There's a huge following of not just rural America or agriculture, but consumers who are really curious about our way of life. Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of really important things happen in rural America. We produce a lot of food, we produce a lot of fiber, we produce a lot of fuel, and people have such access to information that they're seeking out our stories. So I would encourage, someone who is wanting to be vocal about what they do or what their community does or their organization to, just tell the story where you are. So if you've got a hometown newspaper, if you've got radio, if you have TV, reach out to those outlets. Let them know what you're doing. If you are involved in a commodity organization, they have people on staff who will help you do that. And they are hungry to help train good rural storytellers. I am one of those people. And it is so fun to show people what they're capable of. If you don't want to start with mainstream media, then use your own platforms. Maybe you like to write, so you can write in a blog. Maybe you are already on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or, heaven forbid, TikTok. Then you can use those as channels to deliver your message. And again, if you're unsure of how to tell it or what to say, reach out to those commodity organizations or get involved with the commodity organization. Or it doesn't have to be commodity. I keep saying that because that's where I'm involved in. But, the groups that you're involved in, have avenues, they have people who can help you tell that story. And that's what we do. Richard and I at OBP, every day we help people tell stories. And I'm always like, keep it short. And here I am like talking past, my 30-second allotment that I would have already cut Richard off. But that's important too. So find those avenues where you're comfortable and go there. And then practice, perfect your story, tighten it, shorten it. I mean, I use my mother to this day. If I write something, my mom reads it. And I'm lucky to have her to do that. And she's like, well, I don't understand this, or, oh my gosh, this is too long. Like, she really helps give me that. Find those people who you can trust to give you feedback. And I tell people it's your elevator speech, just practice telling it over and over and over until it's, ingrained in your mind, on your heart, in your soul. It comes out sincere, and then just go tell it, go tell it.
I love that about the practice, Carmen, because, if I think about the past 20 plus years of my career, I got some media training very early on because of some work I was doing directly working with farmers and then the ag media that would show up at those meetings. And I tell you what, it's that practice that you just kind of go over, with every kind of seasonal change in my career or in my life, I have to practice my own story.
Mhm.
And for me, that means sometimes journaling it out, like writing it out, editing it because I'm a visual person. And then, calling up friends who will give me honest feedback, but still be kind, um, to help me practice that story. And then it becomes a
Absolutely.
little more natural.
Yes. And I tell people, you're so sick. You'll be so sick of telling your story, and that's not the point. That doesn't matter. You should be sick of it. And never memorize, internalize, internalize
Mm.
what and just be passionate about what you're talking about. And it always shows through. I mean, media training, there's so many tips I could give. We don't even have time. But when talking to press, it's very specific and tactical. But most of these rural communities have avenues, or if you're on social, you can tell your own story without anything between you and your audience. And I think that's a great way. I think podcasts are a great way. Everybody listens to podcasts, and it's very,
Especially the Rural Leaders podcast.
especially this podcast. I listened to a bunch of episodes. And I think it's quite. I really enjoyed it. So, yeah, I liked it a lot. But there's lots of different avenues. I think it's important to find like kind of your comfort zone and who you're trying to tell your story to, and go for it.
So just thought of a question. Depending on the platform in which you're telling your story, and if it's a social platform or whatnot, where there's opportunities for responses and feedback, how can you help folks feel a bit more comfortable and not freaked out when they do get responses, and the best way to answer those?
Man, so
That's a good question. I should get my notepad out.
it is
Well,
not easy.
I'm pretty curious what the answer is myself.
I mean, it's not easy, right? And working for members of Congress will prepare you for like the worst comments ever,
Yeah.
as you guys probably know too. But you are always going to have detractors on social. You're always going to have people who don't agree with you. And for some reason, everyone thinks that it's okay to be angry or, maybe rude or unfactual or any of those things on social. I would say if you're not getting those, then keep telling your story. Like you should, I mean, you should be attracting those at some point. You're going to attract them at some point. And I do think there's a time to engage and share information with people, but most of the time, not everyone is gonna, you're not everyone's gonna love what you're saying, and that's okay. And the point is that you're saying it. The point is that you're telling that story, and whether or not everyone in the world agrees with you is not the point. The point is that you're inspiring others to do something, you're educating them about something important. Um, as long as you're truthful and you're gracious and you're sincere and you're polite. I mean, it's sad that we have to remind people, like, you have, be polite. Like, we are human beings, and we should treat each other like that. Then I say, just keep going.
Awesome. Well, you said something a minute ago about you and I working at OBP, and we are storytellers. And I don't know that I've ever thought about it that way. And I think that is what happens. And there is nothing better than an effective storyteller to get folks to rally around an issue, get people to support something. Or frankly, if it's a rural community and there's a lot of great things going on, it attracts people to what's happening in that area. Carmen, we're gonna just about be out of time, but before we let you go, can you let our listeners and viewers know how they can connect with you if they've got questions or anything that you could help them with?
Yes. Well, I'm on Instagram as Fenton times 5, which is not the easiest handle. I should have thought of that as a PR person long ago when Instagram came out. It's hard to change it. Or they can always reach me at OBP. It's carmen.fenton@obpagency.com. And we're online, obpagency.com, and you can find us. We're pretty easy to get a hold of if anyone ever has questions. And we love to talk about what we do and give, help particularly ag and rural America, tell their story.
Awesome. Well, this has been great. I knew it would be. We were very excited to have you on. And Dana, do you want to say anything before we jump out of here?
Yeah, Carmen, thank you for joining us. I have some notes to work on my own story, the story of my rural community, and the generational story of my family. So thank you for your sharing your expertise and your time with us. And I wish you a Merry Christmas, or hope you enjoy it with all of your littles.
Yes, thank you. Merry Christmas to you guys too.
Okay, Carmen, thank you so much, and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Maybe I'll be talking to you between Christmas and New Year, or maybe not. But it was great having you on, and you're welcome back anytime. I can tell you that.
Well, it was fun. Thank you.
So we're going to have to jump out of here. So we'll be right back after these messages to wrap up this episode.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Never gonna let you go. Never gonna let
Welcome back to the Rural Leaders Podcast. Dana, that was a lot of fun. I think, in your travels, in your experience, in your career, I know in mine that, in some of the roles that we've had in the past, we could have probably been more successful had we mastered the art of good storytelling. Yeah. Maybe not you, but I know I have. And it's certainly something that has been, it's something that is certainly a valuable tool. And I thought Carmen really helped us a lot with how to do that effectively.
She did. And she, brought back to mind for me a lot of opportunities throughout my career where I've had um, potential to tell a good story, right? And like you said, I haven't always done it well, but really understanding a lot of the things that we've brought in this series um, kind of brings a new perspective to how I tell the story of my hometown, how the story of my family here in this area, how I tell the stories of my time in Washington D.C. or working on different projects throughout the years. So I'm going to have to do a little thinking over this holiday season about my stories before I really just kind of get them started around the dinner table.
Absolutely. And, I know, I've spent some time with Carmen and obviously some other folks here where I am now at OBP. And there is, we talk, we used to talk about orators, that like people in Congress or people
Mm,
that were
hmm.
visible, that were orators, and they could bring people to their side of an argument. They could bring people and rally people around a common effort or a common idea because of how they told the story, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so I think that I know I do. I need to work on how to tell my story, and I've been telling stories for a long time, but I need to work on that as well and try to be better and more effective and more efficient at telling my story. So again, I thought Carmen offered some tools and some tips and some advice about how to do that that really should help folks as they travel the journey of storytelling.
that's exactly right. And we do want to take the opportunity to allow our listeners in the community that are a part of this podcast to tell your story. If you have a good story that you'd love to share with rural leaders across the country, please reach out to us. Let us know about that story. You can contact us through email at dana@theruralleaderspodcast.com or Richard at theruralleaderspodcast.com. We're looking for stories of success, stories of tough times where you might inspire others who are going through tough times. We're looking for stories about tools that have been used or how you gathered momentum in your community to act and make changes that are helpful to the residents there. So please reach out to us. Let us know about your great stories for rural America, and we'll look forward to telling them in 2023. We wish you all a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and a very Happy New Year. And until we see you in the new year, um, tell your story well.